There are roughly 119,740,000 kilometers between the planets Venus and Mars.
Somewhere in the middle lies Earth.
That's one small step for man,
Omnibus.
That's a gaslighter.
Love bombing.
Narcissist. Homemaker.
Deal breaker.
one giant leap for mankind.
If he wanted to, he would.
5 signs of avoidant attachment.
10 signs.
You wouldn't consider men and women
Society is broken.
Houston, we've had a problem.
Join us in the space between Venus and Mars.
Welcome to the space between Venus and Mars. I'm Chris.
I'm Jessie.
Today we're visiting an old chestnut. Something that's been in the zeitgeist for quite a long time. It was immortalized in the late 80s film When Harry Met Sally. Can men and women be friends? This is from an 11-page introduction to the script that Nora Ephron wrote.
Oh, cool.
When it was published as a paperback. The truth is that men don't want to be friends with women. Men know they don't understand women, and they don't much care. They want women as lovers, as wives, as mothers, but they're really not interested in them as friends. They have friends. Men are their friends, and they talk to their male friends about sports, and I have no idea what else. Women, on the other hand, are dying to be friends with men. Women know they don't understand men, and it bothers them. They think that if only they could be friends with them, they would understand them. And what's more, and this is their gravest mistake, it would help.
If they were friends?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert. My answer is yes.
We are friends.
Yes.
We are good friends. I have so much to say on this. I really do.
Sure.
First of all, that's my mom's favorite movie. And also I rewatched it for this episode.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost a perfect movie. Like it's so incredible. It's so well done. It's so well paced. I mean, the costumes, the coloring,
The blocking.
the blocking,
Oh my God.
the editing. Like it's just, it's a masterpiece, like in and of itself. Like it's such a wonderful, phenomenal movie. And wow.
But it created an interesting perception, I think, in the public.
It
has
did.
an interesting sort of legacy to it. And the interesting thing when I was reading about it, the original script, they didn't even get together. It was about them being friends and helping them through each other's breakups. And then they just, stayed friends.
Oh.
And it wasn't until they worked on the script for, I think, like over the course of like 4 or 5 years, Rob Reiner and Nora Ephron sort of like collaborating. And it basically, by the end of that whole process, both of them had fallen in love with other people and gotten married. And then they're like, well, we have to give this ending to them.
What?
So it's a very interesting thing that perceptually, like the main legacy of that movie was kind of something that came late in the evolution of it.
That is very fascinating.
Yeah.
That's super fascinating. From the very beginning, when she's ordering the pie, and she's like, I want it this way, but I don't want it. But if you have this pie, like da-da-da, he fell in love with her in that moment. Like Cupid's arrow struck in that moment. They deliberately chose that performance.
Yeah.
Like where you see this desire or him like really seeing her in that moment. And I think it's really hard to come back from that. Like when you have enough of those moments like compounded and you're not like grounded in like, your intentions with someone or anyone. Like you have enough of those moments compounded and you're like, wait a minute. You know what I mean?
Sure.
I don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
That movie is very good about all of the little moments, like even the stuff that's like unscripted, like the slice of pecan pie, like that whole thing.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
It's just these little
so good
pieces of, the legacy of that movie, sort of putting that into the popular lexicon is just kind of fascinating as it being like a collaboration between two people that were not in love with each other. And and in many ways that is the tension of the movie. She was like hearing these stories from Rob Reiner, who like got recently divorced and was like talking about like going out to pick up women, and she was like, I'm disgusted by this, I hate everything about this, and I'm just going to like rail against this in the script, basically. That has now played out in such a way in the culture that like then you get to like Mike Pence saying like he can't even like stand in the same room with a woman because it's that much of an idea of like crossing a line and a boundary.
A couple years ago, I felt really strongly like against this. Like I didn't feel like men and women could be friends. And this was when I was very when I was like a sad, lonely girl.
Okay.
But what's so funny is like growing up, like in high school, I had a lot of friends that were boys.
Mm.
And I don't like to use the term guys, girl. It's very problematic. Or I don't know if it's problematic, but there is a whole stigma behind being a guy's girl and whatever. Like,
Sure.
it comes up a lot on the internet. I'm not saying that I was a guy's girl. I really don't think I was. But there were times where I did feel more connected to the friends that were boys than to the friends that I had that were girls. Looking back, did most of those boys have crushes on me? I don't know. I don't know. So I
Sure.
really do struggle with this because I confided a lot in my friends that were boys when I grew up.
Mm.
But then as I got older and I reflected on that, there were ways where I was like, oh, like, but was it romantic to them because they were experiencing intimacy with me and like these deep, long-winded conversations or whatever where I felt safe?
Sure. But is intimacy only reserved for romantic relationships? Is that part of the confusion of people?
I think so. I think
Yeah.
so. And we'll get into that in a bit. But
Right.
then I did have these like really close friendships with these boys. And then when I wasn't interested in them like romantically, like sometimes there were some not nice situations where that was kind of held over my head a little bit. And it was really stressful for me.
Like a nice guy situation where he was
Yeah.
like, I was doing all this emotional
Yeah.
work with you or something like that.
Yeah.
And-
That was really tough for me. And then of course, you know, my ex-boyfriend was a really good childhood friend.
Mm.
So, yeah, I have a lot of feelings about this, and let's get into it.
Okay.
I guess the more traditional conservative way of thinking about this is like, well, all forms of intimacy are only reserved for your husband or your wife.
Sure.
And like anything else outside of that is like a form of, I don't want to say like betrayal, maybe
Mhm.
too strong, but like an infidelity feels like way too strong too. But I don't know. You know what I mean? Like it's like this, like you're stepping outside of a sacred union, so
Sure.
to speak.
Yeah.
But that's so reductive.
Sure. Well, I mean, I just think it's a complicated thing for a lot of people in the way that like the modern world has people relating to each other. Like I think a big
Mhm.
thing for me as far as like I grew up with my parents divorced. I spent most of the time at home with my mom and sister, a majority of the time. So I feel like I just ended up relating to women in a different way sometimes
Mhm.
and like more at ease sometimes talking with them than with my male friends.
Yeah.
And I don't think that putting all of those burdens of jealousy onto all of these things helps people come out of their shell more and to be more themselves. I don't know.
I think that also too, when we think like this whole idea of like, can men and women be friends? If the answer to you is they can't be, I would further pose the question of like, well, why can that be? Like, is it because you're only viewing men to like serve only one role in your life? And then that kind of, I don't know, it's like you're looking at a whole population of people for them to only serve this one thing. Like they can't be more than all these other things. And furthermore, like I feel like that gets into another rabbit hole of like, well, that's like is reinforcing the patriarchy. Because then it's like if men can't then be this role of a husband or a father, then they're like not useful in your life.
The whole idea of men and women not being able to be friends, I think is really rooted the sense of like there's only one thing to get out of this, which is procreation. And like that being
Right.
the end game for like any kind of
Yes.
friendship or relationship with someone of the
Right.
opposite gender. The idea that just because of that, we now have a limit on like all of our own self-expression within relationships seems like
Mm-hmm.
poison in the well that would like
Mhm.
keep you from like fully nourishing yourself, which is necessary to have a successful relationship.
Totally. It totally is. I do want to get a little bit into how the Greeks kind of
Mm-hmm.
define different forms of love, because I think that it's important to think about these things. So they had like generally, I guess when you search online, there's like generally like 7 different forms of love that the Greeks kind of defined.
Mm-hmm.
First, you have philautia, which is the love of the self. So it's that one's pretty self-explanatory. You have like your self-love, how you view, kind of like self-esteem, how you view yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have pragma, which is the kind of love that occurs when you stay together for practical reasons. Think of like people who are just staying together for the children or staying together so they don't need to get divorced. The Greeks actually did identify that as a form of love, which I found interesting because it wouldn't be considered kind of like we think about that as sort of like a loveless marriage. But the idea of the Greeks was like, okay, no, you stay together for practical reasons. Like even the act of doing that is considered a form of love. And then you have ludus, which is playful joy and a lack of commitment. So it's kind of more of like the love that belongs to the night of a one night stand or a casual hookup or something like that. And then, of course, you have eros, which is romance, infatuation, and sexual desire, which is when we think of like when we first like that boom, smack, love at first sight, Cupid's arrow love. That's kind of arrow. And I think that that's kind of what we are out searching for when we're kind of going on a ton of dates and trying to see like
That's
when
probably what most people are chasing.
most people are,
feeling-wise.
most people are chasing eros for sure. And then you have philia, which is sincere, platonic, and mutually beneficial, which we would consider that friendships, like when friendships kind of reach their peak, like you are kind of in this space of true connection and tenderness between two people. It can be 2 women, 2 men, whatever, but there's nothing necessarily sexual about it. Then you have storage, which is parent holds for their child, the love that comes from there, which is very different than the others because the child carries no responsibility for the parent. So that's kind of important. It's not like a two-way street in the same way that these other forms are. And then, of course, you have like agape, which is, I'm sure people have heard of it. It's like an unconditional love for all living things. It's more of like how you connect to nature and spiritually and kind of like your like world love for people and like where altruism comes from and things like that. What we aspire modern day marriage to be, I think at first we want it to be like this eros, like instant attraction, like super deep desire for romance and infatuation. And then, I mean, in a perfect world, we would kind of ebb and flow between eros, philia, pragma, like you kind of are, even ludus, right? Like in all these spheres of love, and you kind of ebb and flow between all of them in different seasons of your marriage or your relationship and things like that. Which honestly is a lot to ask for. Which is why I think it is interesting that the Greeks did identify pragma as a form of love. You know, like again, maybe you would go to the brothel for ludus. And then you'd go to the bathhouse for philia, but then you'd go home and that'd be pragma.
Okay, I think there's a little bit of ludus in the bathhouse.
Yeah. I mean, there's always a little bit of ludus in the bathhouse, you know?
And in Greece yet.
So, I mean, but like, my point is, you know, all of them are different forms of love and not necessarily in the way that maybe we would think modern they would be.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it just becomes at a certain point like this list of loves from the Greek definitions. I don't know if that comes from the winnowing down of like traditional values being sort of honed in thing in like the 20th century, but like at a certain point, all of these things that were pretty separate now are all pinned onto like
one person. Yeah, I know.
And that's insane. That you would expect that one, two, like pragma, ludus, eros, and philia, all from your life partner.
Yeah. And people have been saying this for a long time. Like, I think Esther Perel says this too. She's like, oh, you used to have a community for what now we find in just one person.
Mm-hmm.
It's unrealistic. It's not fair. And yet we do it anyway.
And we keep on out of stubbornness mostly.
Yeah, we do. We do. It's just like, how did we get here? The loss of community spaces, maybe?
Sure. I think there's a reason that like so many people end up going to like big cities, even outside of like actual career or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's a sense always in the suburbs that like it's a false sense of community. It's a community where everyone's like still suspicious of each other, like, and like not really like leaning into connect in the same way necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
Like you would have done maybe in like our idealized version of what the 50s suburb was.
What's interesting is that as more women did enter the workforce, we did start to get more cross-sex relationships. And they're actually really, really important because society does function a lot better when men and women are friends, actually, because then over time, men actually do become less misogynistic and women do kind of start to understand men a little bit better.
Yeah. And like you have those relationships in the office that I think probably were better. I mean, obviously better for the actual workplace because you have an entirely different set of perspectives that were never represented before in the workplace.
Mm-hmm.
But then also, yeah, like you're saying, you have an actual understanding between the genders that like increases everyone's awareness of intentionality and motivation as far as like you better understanding maybe even like you're a wife or your husband just from having those conversations in a space that like is like that. And I think obviously you have like, you know, affairs or whatever. That's like a whole other kit and caboodle.
Yeah.
But like I think sometimes those things were just reduced to like, oh, that's the work wife, the work husband. And I think that that's one of those labels you throw on something like that that really makes it into like you're turning it into an indictment of something that maybe is like a healthy friendship. I don't know.
That is actually really interesting. Like, why can't we just say like, oh, my friend from work? We still say that like, oh, my work husband, my work wife. But it's like, again, it's still almost sidelining the men-women friendship. Like, why does it automatically
has to be put into this relationship bucket? Yeah.
Yes, that's so interesting. Okay, so there's this philosopher called Elizabeth Brack. She coined this word basically called ammonormativity. I'm just going to read this from her website, but It says the belief that marriage and companionate romantic love has a special value leads to overlooking the value and care of other caring relationships. So yeah, and it's kind of like we can't even, like our default is still the marriage thing. So even in other contexts, we're like, oh, that's my work husband, my work wife, because I can't have a friend at work. I don't know. And I think people like it because it's fun and it's silly and it's cute and it's a way to describe maybe how that part of your life functions.
Sure.
You know,
sure.
I do think that it's interesting that is our default.
It's our default frame for perceiving like everything.
For
I feel
everything,
like,
yeah.
You know,
if we are thinking from like an evolutionary biological perspective, like the whole goal is to keep the human race alive. And how do you do that without, you know, being with someone and then
but you think
making more humans?
Sure. But I think also humans have evolved past that. Like even if on a subconscious level, that's people's motivations. I think like we have,
I mean, yeah,
now have created structures and ideas that have evolved past just viewing everything through that lens.
Also, not to get too much into it, but like the reason why we have, you can even just look at like humans in general, the fact that we have grandmothers, like women still live beyond their reproductive years for quite some time.
Sure. And we're not like throwing them out on ice floes still and stuff like that, you know?
No, like that was such a crazy picture you just painted. But yeah, like grandmas are really important. Grandmas are really important to society. That in and of itself should give us pause that there's more to life than just figuring out how to procreate.
Yeah.
And those are like really enriching lives. Like you hear women and it's like, you know, their lives got so much richer after they had the great change. I think it would behoove us to look beyond just finding so much importance in just the romanticness of it all.
Mm-hmm.
It's tough because like as a young person, you are, and I mean young in terms of like kind of our age range, like mid to late 20s, early 30s, whatever. You have resources, you're young, you're healthy, whatever. Like now is ideally the time to think about coupling up with someone, maybe having a baby or two, whatever. A lot of what we have been talking to and the reason why we're having such disconnection or whatever is because like we put that above so many other things in our life. And so
Right.
a lot of people think like, oh, my life can't even start until I have that one thing figured out, you know? And for the longest time, like maybe it was just my life, a chapter of my life, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But it was like me thinking of this idea where it's like, oh, you know, like I'm going to get married because that's when my life starts and my life will start after I get married. And it's like, no, your life is happening now. Your friends aren't just placeholders for when your husband comes. Like your
Right.
friends are
Yeah.
friends, or your friends are your friends now. And then when your husband comes, then that'll be another addition to your life. It won't be, it's not like a plug and play, like a replacement, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I guess I'm just realizing now how much we do devalue the man-woman friendship.
Sure. How many people do you know where it's like they get into a relationship and then it's like, you're like, well, I guess I'll never see them again. It sort of shuts down like their ability to connect as friends too. They get sucked into the vortex again of the expectations of like, this person is going to be 4 kinds of love for me and they're going to cover all the bases.
Mhm.
And I don't need to go to my friends for that support anymore or whatever.
I didn't
And
even think of that. You're right about that.
like it's more than just men and women friendships. I think it's just friendship in general is kind of
Just
lower
so
on that
lower
totem
on the
pole
list.
because
yeah.
again, I think it's that maybe it's that over eagerness of people of like
I found
how
someone
rare it is. Yes, and
to connect with.
Mhm.
I mean, but what is it that's rare? Because philia, I feel like the love that's sincere and honest and between two people, and it's sad to say, but that is becoming rare as well, right? But it used to be something, you know, you find people you click with and you kind of build a friendship together. I think that we want to place sometimes that onto like when you do like that Eros love.
Mm-hmm.
And they say that you should marry your best friend, but are you going to have you're not necessarily going to have Eros with your best friend. Furthermore, I think a big part of marriage probably is the pragma love. You don't even know that you're going to be able to do that with, I don't know. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. I mean, I think that the Eros thing is a little bit overblown with people. I
Yeah.
think a lot of the time Eros is just kind of mistaken for like a toxic dynamic where you're chasing after someone and like they want nothing to do with you or something like that. But I mean, maybe that's just me.
Well, it's funny. I got this. So I got these descriptions off of this website called The Hero's Spouse, and it's MLC Forum, which stands for Midlife Crisis Forum. But I'm just going to read the whole thing for Eros, like the whole description that they put. It says, Eros, this is the type of relationship that we most often associate with the word love. This type of love is characterized by romance, infatuation, and sexual desire. Eros is the Greek name for Cupid, which shoots people in the arrow and causes this kind of attraction. He's often depicted as blindfolded child, implying that Eros often strikes without reason. This kind of love is the most dangerous, but it is the thing that we chase with our whole hearts.
Yes.
It consumes us completely and defies any kind of logic.
Correct.
It's the thing that makes love blind. I do remember going to this like little dating seminar thing a couple years ago. I remember this one girlie saying, you know, it was really unfortunate because there was a guy that was into me and I turned him down, but it really sucked because I knew that we would be really good friends.
Mm.
And I think there was another woman who kind of shared a similar experience, but she said, we actually did become good friends. And she said, he ended up finding someone else. I ended up finding someone else. But then it became like this very enriching kind of connection that we both had. And it was like it became a very important relationship in both of their lives. Yeah, that really struck out to me because I remember it being in a moment where I was like very touchy about feeling like I would lead somebody on or something. Like obviously maybe I had some wounds that I need to heal or whatever from when I was younger. And like maybe boys that were friends with me like had different ideas about kind of their intentions or they weren't equally aligned or whatever. But more than anything, like I think it made me think of kind of in a way that maybe I wasn't looking at men as people, complete people, you know? And it's like, oh, well, if they can't offer me this sort of like companionship that I'm looking for that is supposed to be romantic, then what is the point of even having them in my life? Again, like it's just so interesting that I got there so quickly because I wanted a boyfriend so bad. So I don't know. I think whenever we try and put like so many, like something that we really, really want above just treating people with dignity and respect, like whether that's like money or a relationship or a job or whatever, like it really does bring out the worst in us.
Yeah. We're thinking of them as so separate, the opposite gender. Like, I mean, again, the namesake of the podcast, like they're from another planet. Like that you're only going to be able to do two things with them. Either put them on a pedestal or like see them as like another species that like needs to be eradicated. And it's like to understand them. Yeah, you really do need to like practice actual friendship.
Mm-hmm.
If we're going back to closing the gap between men and women, like you're not going to close the gap without mutual understanding.
Yeah.
I mean, understanding your partner is very important.
Yeah.
Understanding women as just people and men and women understanding men as just people is really important to like not then placing all of these huge burden of expectations onto each other. Being perfect partners, being perfect people. And then, I mean, also just like, again, not expecting like all of the love in the world to come from them and them alone, because that's an impossible expectation.
Right, right. The space between Venus and Mars gets smaller and smaller with men and women being platonic friends.
Yes.
It can, you know?
I think that was illuminating as always. Glad we were able to navigate the space. Thank you for listening. We will be back in a couple weeks with another exciting installment
of the space between Venus and Mars.
See you later. Bye.
Bye.
Our show is made by us, Chris Dold and Jesse Rojas. Our producer is the lovely Marianne Rojas. Our composer and mixer extraordinaire is Rosalind Wong, and all of our art is carefully handcrafted by Jacob Bankoff. If you haven't already, make sure to follow us on Instagram and TikTok. You can find us there under @Venus and Mars Pod. Make sure to rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts.